everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this SPS Alumni Relations webinar, America's Inflection Point, the role of companies and brands in addressing racial inequality. My name is Danielle Orenberger Hopkins. I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at NYU SPS. And today I'm lucky enough to be joined by three incredible panelists. We have first LaToya Christian, who is an SPS alumna and received her MS in Integrated Marketing in 2013. She's also the Managing Partner Director at GroupM in New York, where she spearheads special projects and leads client management across retail, entertainment, advocacy, and CPG accounts. As a conscious marketer, she strives to infuse culture into the area of data analytics and strategy to tell rich, impactful brand and consumer stories. We also have Erica Gabrielle Foldy, who is an Associate Professor of Public and Nonprofit Management at NYU Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. She's a researcher, teacher, organizer, and consultant who studies identity and diversity in organizations, largely focusing on race and racism. She's also the co-author of The Colorblind, Talking and Not Talking About Race at Work. We also have Maya Brown, an adjunct instructor at SPS teaching database management and modeling, as well as competitive strategy, both at the Division of Programs and Business, their program of integrated marketing and communications. She's a brand champion, revenue enhancer, and transformative business leader who brings a competitive edge, unique value, and authoritative knowledge for the beauty industry on an international scale. As chief strategist for Maze Marketing Consulting, LLC, Maya leads the digital marketing strategy, brand positioning, social media, and consumer insights to drive long-term growth for clients in the apparel and beauty industries. Ms. Brown's entrepreneurial vision and proven turnaround tactics have been instrumental in innovating and revitalizing brands. In 2015, WWD Beauty Incorporated recognized her as one of the most 50 influential people in the multicultural beauty market. She's also known as a transformative leader whose people-centric approach transforms culture, inspiring growth, and increasing value-add contributions. We are so appreciative to have these three thought and industry leaders participating in this incredibly important and timely discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome LaToya to kick off the conversation.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you, Maya and Erica, for joining this conversation and for being open and available. So I think we can just jump right in. We've all witnessed and experienced and felt just the level of changes and things that have been happening in our country over the last 2 weeks, specifically around racial issues and how that's showing up in various areas, whether it be corporate America, police relations, and then even in some cases how brands have been speaking out. So one of the things that we really wanted to address in this webinar today is to really dive a little bit deeper into the role of brands and how they have been coming out and speaking out and making statements and making donations around what they see happening in today's climate and how that's been received by consumers overall. So we've had brands from Nike to Ben & Jerry's, L'Oreal, just about every brand from across every sector come out and speak. And one of the things that has been very interesting is that as brands have come out and spoken about just what their positioning is on the systemic inequalities we have within this country from a race perspective, many have been called out also. So we want to also dive into that and get a little bit of insight as to what they actually need to do to make changes within their own organization. So I'm going to kick off the conversation with you, Maya, as one of the marketers in the room. So as I stated, we've seen brands across every vertical come out and speak about what we've all witnessed through the George Floyd incident, and just really even acknowledging what their stance is in terms of inequalities. What was your reaction when you first saw so many brands come out and speak about these issues?
Well, thank you, LaToya, again, for inviting me to participate in this conversation, because I think it's very timely and I think it's needed in the industry. As a marketer that's been in the industry for over 30 years now, it's everything that happened with George Floyd and the brands that have championed this initiative, I think, hopefully speaks to the progressive nature of where we want to see our country going, and as brands, how they want to advocate the support of the consumer who's purchasing from them. Because at the end of the day, we have to start realizing that the country that we serve is a reflection of us from our consumer base, the people who are purchasing our products, the products that we're making for them. And so we have to support them in what they're feeling, their pains, their joys, and their successes, help celebrate them, and also go in and support when there is an issue. And I believe with the George Floyd incident, that's not something that just impacted Black people, that impacted all people, because it was such a heinous crime. I mean, when you look at it in totality, that's a man who was laying on the ground under a person's knee for over 8 minutes, crying out for his mother, for his life, the fact that he couldn't breathe. Everyone feels that. That's not something that's just a Black issue. That's a people issue, and that's a human issue. And I believe with the brand speaking up, that's what the rallying cry is about. It's about the human nature and the effect of how that impacts us as individuals.
Yeah. And so obviously you weren't surprised or anything like that to see them speak out. Do you think that in some way, obviously they were able to humanize themselves a bit. I know some, individuals felt like, well, this is performative allyship. And do you really mean it? There's a difference between a statement and taking a stance and then having that reflected. What have been your thoughts around that specific topic that has come out since so many brands have made statements?
So I'll be truthful. It's too soon for us really to understand the authenticity behind the brands. I mean, because this is just occurring. It's going to require commitment, long-term visibility, and also metric results to understand if what they're truly saying and what they're truly doing actually is going to have any measurable impact. So right now, I think I would like to believe from an allyship standpoint that the brands are truly meaningful in their support and what they say they're going to do, and not just trying to toss money at a situation to kind of remedy what's happening within our country. I think when you look at some of the initiatives and you look at some of the brands that I think have been on the bandwagon for quite some time. I'm an advocate and a fan of Nike, love Nike. And one thing I love about Nike is they're not afraid to be disruptive. They're not afraid to take a chance because I think they believe no matter what, whoever is against them, they have enough support for who is for them. Mm-hmm. And the fact that when they launched their Dream Crazy campaign in 2018 with Colin Kaepernick and supporting him in his stance against police injustice and taking a knee, they receive, some negative backlash, but when you look at it in totality, the positive response that they had, it was overwhelming. And when you think about this generation, when I think about the millennials, when I think about the Gen Ys, they want change. Gen Zs, they want change. They want to see progressive, future-forward behaviors and actions. This generation is comprised of so many different individuals, from a business and a marketing standpoint of how we have to speak to them. We have to make sure that we are proper with our pronoun use. We have to make sure that we are reflecting their lifestyle choices, that we are not being offensive in anything that we put out in the marketplace. So from that standpoint, I believe it benefits us as the marketer and as the brand, because it forces us to educate ourselves. It forces us to expose ourselves to something that might not be within our comfort zone, but as a marketer, we're not always supposed to be comfortable. We're supposed to be the disruptors within the industry. We're the ones that are supposed to own and create the narrative. That is who we are. We are the storytellers. And so right now, hopefully with the brands and the allyship, this is a chance for them to really change the narrative. Because me personally, having been in the industry for 30 years, having gone through something similar to this in the 90s with Rodney King, with O.J. Simpson, things that have happened over the years, James Byrd, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, he was dragged in Texas. You know what? Enough is enough. Like, slavery ended in the 1800s. Why are we still talking about racial divide in 2020?
Yeah.
Let's move forward. Let's have a new conversation. Let's talk about how we can become one united America, push forward, own our business, create that capital power, and that economic leadership, that's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
Have a conversation around affluency and how we can continue to grow and elevate our country. Not about race. We should have satisfied the color divide a long time ago.
Agreed. Very much so. I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think, Erica, this is a good segue into a lot of the work that you do, right? So from, everything Maya's echoing from a standpoint of, brands really saying, okay, I understand who my future consumer is. They're more diverse. They want to see me be progressive, but there's also that reality that while we're having these conversations and these statements and these posts and these donations are, being put out into the marketplace, right? And some are perceiving it as, is this real? Some are perceiving it like, yes, I'm glad they did it. There's also been a certain level of backlash, right? Because what we've also seen is even some of our beloved brands, the ones that have always been advocates and have always used their voice, they have now come under some level of scrutiny, depending on the brand of, well, what does your internal structure look like? Let me see your leadership team, right? So you're standing here for me in stance of the Black community, and against these heinous crimes that we continually see the Black community experience. But I don't see myself in your organizational ranks, and definitely not in your senior ranks. So Erica, I know your work really focuses on organizational structure and also the role of race within corporate America. So can you let us know some of your thoughts about how the brands that we're seeing coming out can really begin to tackle this and to get serious about making real changes within their organizations?
Sure. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. And it's super interesting for me to hear you guys talk from a marketing perspective, since it's really not my area of expertise at all. So I think before we talk about what can change, we have to talk about what's the problem.
Yeah.
And you think about the decades of, affirmative action, equal employment opportunity, and managing diversity and, implicit bias training. And none of it really seems to have moved the needle. So first of all, I think any attempts towards racial justice are going to come right smack into white privilege and white supremacy in organizations. And we just have to name that. White people get lots and lots of benefits from being white. And I think they're unlikely to give up those benefits. Well, we can see how unlikely we are to give up those benefits. What's also, what makes it more complicated is that most white people, I think, have no idea that they have these benefits to begin with. I think that those that might have an inkling of that are still quite unlikely to want to give them up. So overall, I think we just have to name the problem, of whiteness, white supremacy, white privilege. The other thing that was true of previous attempts to do this, equal employment opportunity, affirmative action, et cetera, all of them were about kind of social identity more broadly, right? Affirmative action, equal employment opportunity, managing diversity, it's around race, but it was also about gender, and it was about nationality and religion and many other things. And of course, that's good. We don't want to have bias or discrimination on any of those groups. But it's my experience that people, particularly white people, if they're given any other topic to talk about, they will go to that topic, because race is the most difficult, the most charged for white people. It brings up guilt and shame and lots of other stuff. So while we've been having these broad diversity conversations, and in some level those have to continue, we have also got to have a targeted conversation about race and racism in organizations. So that is what I believe is the first step. I could certainly talk more, but I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, the one thing I will definitely say, and I think you really just naming it and saying it is one of the things that we often don't see from within corporate America and within organizations, right? I know for me personally, one of the things that I've always noticed is, we think we can do unconscious bias trainings enough that we train our way out of it. And for me, racism has always been an issue of the heart, right? Not necessarily of the mind. That's how I've always approached it. And then to your point, the power dynamics, right? So with us being where we are right now, knowing that we might not necessarily be able to do enough forums and trainings to, make our way out of this, but we are at least naming it and calling it a name, right? Maybe not inside our corporate walls, but at least in society overall. So within corporations, what do you think that next step needs to be? And the reason why I also asked that is because we saw in the case of Reddit, right? Alexis Ohanian, he stepped down to make space for a Black individual to take that role and sit on the board. So for me, the whole conversation also around the power dynamics, is there also this perception of, well, I have to give up my power or I have to give up my seat in order for someone else to have this seat as well. And I think that's also one of the things that we don't address and we don't talk about. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that. I know that was a little roundabout, but.
No, I totally get it. And I was actually at a Black Lives Matter rally a few days ago and looking at the signs and thinking, if I had created a sign, what would I say? And I realized I would say, Black Lives Matter, defund white people. It's one thing to defund the police, but what we really need to do is defund white people and figure out,
let's unpack that.
Let's unpack that. Is that what you said?
A little bit, yeah.
Sure. So what I mean is, until white people start actually thinking about how they kind of guard their privilege and hang on to benefits, I don't think that's me, then I'm not convinced that things are going to change. So I'm not actually talking about going into people's bank accounts and, taking out money, but I do think, issues around reparations and how do we truly make up for 400 years of violence? I think those conversations have to happen. They have to happen in society at large, but I think they also need to happen in organizations as well.
Yeah. The one thing that has also come up quite a bit, and I think this also goes back to the marketing conversation, is sometimes just representation. And I know I'll speak from it. We've seen from a marketing and business perspective how we've seen messages go out in the world that don't necessarily reflect the audience in the most authentic and accurate way. And I think even from a marketing perspective, a lot of that has to do with just even not only having a seat at the table, but having the position and then having the voice, right? And so one of the things that we're seeing now, or we're hearing a lot of, is, while we're thinking about, how do you right size your organization to have representation? So therefore, the work and everything that you do is reflected. There's this thought of, well, you can't hire your way out of this either, right? And you want to make sure that when you are bringing these individuals in, should you decide to do that, you're also creating a culture that welcomes their ideas, that values them, where their voices can be heard. So therefore it is reflected. So Erica, I'm a little interested to understand what some of your thoughts are on that as well, in terms of, not necessarily just hiring our way out of this, but also making sure that the culture is appropriate and values these diverse voices and these diverse perspectives. So therefore it can actually be seen out there in the world.
Yeah, again, a really great question. So I guess the first thing I would say is, I wouldn't downplay, and I don't think you are, but downplay the importance of representation. Mm-hmm. Honestly, moving the needle on representation it's hardly moved, particularly at higher levels. So to me, if I really want to see whether a company is putting its money where its mouth is, representation is a really, really important illustration of that. And I think I don't think you're denying that.
No.
I do believe that when companies think about how to change, they need to think on 3 levels. They need to think about the individual level, the cultural level, and the structural level. The individual level has traditionally been all the diversity trainings and the implicit bias trainings. They tend not to work, and sometimes they can make things worse. And we could talk more about how to make those better, but that's one level. The second level is the cultural level. And the cultural level is all about the kind of unspoken cues and norms about what's acceptable, who's included, who's excluded. When you think about the whole concept of professionalism is really built on white people's, norms, right? If you think about what's considered professional dress, if you think about what's considered, the right kind of music to be playing in your reception area, those things are all largely based on a kind of invisible standard of whiteness, which is kind of the whole notion of professionalism is built on that. If we're going to make changes to the culture of an organization, we have to think about all these very subtle cues that we're sending that say some people are welcome and some people are not. And then that third level is structural. And without the structural changes, you're not going to make either the individual or cultural changes. And just I'll say quickly about that. For example, the way to make structural change is to have every department have very specific goals about representation and also about culture, right? Do people in your department feel that they belong? Do they feel they can bring their best to work? And you have to hold those people accountable to those goals, and you do that through a performance assessment system. So if you have diversity goals, but they are not in every person's performance appraisal process, then you're sending the message that they don't really matter. So again, I think we need to work at the individual, cultural, and structural levels.
Okay, so let's say in a perfect world, right, that we are able to make progress and we are able to institute a lot of those changes that you're speaking about, Erica, on the 3 levels. Maya, my question to you is, from a marketing perspective, right, or from a messaging perspective, do you feel that now that so many companies have come out and made a stance that, you know what, as a consumer, I'm not going to forget this. So I now need to know what you're doing in terms of really right-sizing some things within your organization? Or do you feel as though it just should innately show up by the way they're experiencing the brand?
I think it's twofold. I think the company can continue to update the consumer about all of the efforts that they're doing. I think consumers want to continue to see that you are supporting the actions and the initiatives that I believe in and that I advocate for. So they can do that with any of their corporate communications, anything through their social media platforms, owning the narrative about what they're doing to make contributions and impact. And then also I think within their company environment, everyone is on the bandwagon of the number of diverse individuals that you have within your organization. And to go back to what Erica said, I think it's important to show the leadership that you have within your company, and that the consumers can see that the decision makers are a reflection of me. And so therefore they do have a lot more believability in that brand and what that brand is trying to do to support them from a customer loyalty standpoint.
Yeah. And do you feel that obviously that has some merit to it in terms of growing brand perception and sentiment and all those coveted metrics that marketers, like to kind of benchmark themselves against from a marketing perspective, not necessarily from an organizational standpoint?
I think it's all still 360 in all of the messaging and communications that you put out in the marketplace. So I think if the brands and the companies themselves with the leadership are transparent, that they communicate, that they're authentic in the messaging that they're putting out there, I think consumer loyalty and sentiment will continue to support and believe that that brand is really putting putting the actions behind the words.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So my question to Erica now is, how do business leaders stay committed to this? What does this look like for them, in the long haul? And the reason why I also ask that is because, this is not the first, we've all seen the reports by now about, more diverse teams put out better work in the environment, in the marketplace. And, Maya just spoke about, how that could lead to, just even better perceptions with your brands, and it builds a better culture, but yet we struggle to actually see it happen. So if you were speaking to a business leader right now that was really serious about implementing these changes, what would you say to them that would hopefully motivate them to keep them going with this for the long haul, and not necessarily something that is just a moment in time, and have them realize that this is a movement. This is something that needs to have long-term effort behind it.
That is a great question. So first of all, I just want to reiterate your point that this work is that leaders have to understand that if they make this commitment, they are committing to years of difficult work.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, the instant they start doing anything, they start conversations, they start changing the performance appraisal system, whatever, they're going to meet tremendous resistance. And the leaders have to be prepared to work through that. They have to know that the resistance is coming, and they have to not give up when it happens. And often the resistance comes from a variety of populations in the organization, right? For different reasons, usually, but a lot of populations get uncomfortable about this. So leaders have to understand, and they have to make clear to their people that this is a long-term effort. We may not be very good at it at the beginning because we're all learning about how to do this, but we're going to learn from our mistakes, and we're going to move forward, and we are going to make this happen, even with resistance. In terms of what leaders can say to their people to motivate them, I think there are two really important reasons, and I think both reasons have to be validated and expressed. One is, it's the right thing to do. We've got, 400 years, of racism and violence to make up for, so this is the right thing to do. And it's going to be helpful for our business. And when leaders make that second argument, they have to be very specific about how exactly, whether it's pharmaceuticals or athletic gear or filmmaking, whatever it is, why is this important, not just broadly to the world in general, but to our company and how we, and our particular strategy, and how we are trying to make ourselves into the world. I think if leaders can understand that both those rationales are really important, and if they can make people understand that it's a long road, and everybody's got to be part of it, and everyone's going to make mistakes, including me, the leader.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a chance for it to work.
Okay. And then one of my last questions to both of you is, as we've been having these conversations over the last 2 weeks, I myself have been fully immersed in conversations from individuals from both a personal and professional perspective. And one of the things that has come up a few times is, I'm hoping this is different. I'm hoping this time it's different. I'm hoping that, COVID on top of, everyone literally watching this, horrific action and being, brought to light, to really understand what the Black community is going through, that this really resonates with people and they start to understand it. And I think one of the other things we're starting to talk a lot more about that I haven't heard before is education. Educate yourself, right? It's not necessarily for the Black community to sit down and hold your hand and teach you everything. Go educate yourself, right? And so those conversations have led a lot of people, even myself at times, to be very honest with you, to think or to feel like, I hope this time is different. I hope there's a shift coming. So I want your perspective on, just with your knowledge and experience in both of your respective fields, does this feel different? And if so, how? So Maya, I'll start with you with that question. Does this time feel different? And if so, tell us why or why not.
So it's funny you asked that because we did discuss that briefly for the call. And for me personally, it feels similarly to what we went through in the 90s. However, the difference is the generational shift. And I say that from the perspective of, when I was in my 20s, we were the young generation. We were Generation X. We were the first generation really removed from civil rights. So now we've got 2 generations after my generation as Generation X. And Generation Y and Generation Z, they are much more socially diverse. They're much more conscious and much more aware. And I would also say they're much more independent in terms of their thinking as to what they want, how they feel, and their ability to speak out. And that is, to me, the difference of what's happening now versus what happened over 20, 30 years ago. And that difference is, it's the mindset. I do believe we're poised to shift the conversation, and we're to move to be much more progressive with our society because of all of the versatility and the diversity that we have that's comprised of Generation Y and Generation Z. I think for the first time, we truly are going to have the change makers become dominant leaders in society and push forth and be the difference that we want. Because I don't believe that it will change until the generations come together and push forth the change. And that has to be something that everyone believes in and that everyone participates in.
Okay, thank you. I agree with that. Erica, I want you to answer that question too, but then I'm going to stack another question on top of it that I just came to mind. So if you can share with us a little bit about, does this feel different this time around? If so, tell us why, why not?
Sure. Yeah, so I have, I don't know, at least a 40-year view on this, coming of age in the 70s. And I have seen multiple cycles. And at first I didn't think this was going to be different. And then I have definitely allowed myself some hope in the last couple of weeks. I feel like the demonstrations the protests have been way more widespread, much more diverse. A lot of people are talking about the fact that there are more white people involved and people from other backgrounds. I know in my little corner here in Massachusetts, there are protests going on in every town and every little, suburb, along with with all the bigger ones that we hear about. I also think, and I said this earlier, people are naming not just race, but racism in a whole different way. People are focusing specifically on anti-Black racism and not just racism in general. So all those things are hopeful to me. From my perspective, protest is absolutely essential. It has to move to politics. People have to vote. And then it has to move to policy. The people who are in power have to pass the right laws. We're seeing little bits of that here and there. Cuomo, signed a law about police banning chokeholds. That's a great, tiny little start. The big question is, does that continue?
Right. The other thing that I want to add to what you were talking about, even in terms of the shift and just being able to name it, if let's say you're in an organization, because I also want to think about what's that actionable item that someone could take away from this.
Yeah, sure.
So I know all across the country, companies and individuals were having these conversations, but what I also notice is sometimes we're having these conversations in the same silos we've always been having them in, right? So let's say you're within an organization or even within your own community, and you have Black individuals, white individuals, different life phases, life stages, generations.
Yeah.
How would you kind of help, I would probably say white people, to maybe not necessarily loosen some of the discomfort, but just even be able to think about how do we actually, what is it that I need to bring to this conversation? Is it just show up and listen? Or is it more so, have some level of reflection and engage in the conversation in a new way that maybe you haven't done before? Because that's one of the things that, I'll be very honest, even within my circles, I've been struggling to really help myself and other individuals. Like these are the conversations we need to have that we're not having. And the reason why is, how do we even kick them off? How do we need to show up to these conversations?
Yeah, it's such a big topic and something that I've thought a lot about. And I will try to be brief. Okay. So to me, there are a few ground rules for these conversations when I teach about this and consult. One is to expect discomfort, another is to speak your truth and to hear other people's truths. And another one is to expect non-closure. And when I first ran across that, I was surprised by it, but I've learned that that's incredibly important because you get into these conversations And you can pretty much guarantee that not everyone's going to walk away saying, well, I'm glad we figured that out and we agree on that. So expecting non-closure is super important. The other thing that I think is just absolutely critical is we imagine these conversations where everybody has something to contribute and everybody has something to learn. So traditionally, we do think about, kind of white people having to listen and learn from people of color, from Black people. I think that's essential, although it's a huge burden on people of color. So we have to be very careful about how we manage that. But I actually think if we think about it in reverse as well, we open up a different kind of learning space. I actually believe that people of color can learn something from white people about race. And that can be a very revolutionary thought, both for white people and for people of color. But just as a brief example, I teach a class on race, identity, and inclusion in organizations. And I had a student, a Dominican man, say to me, what can I learn from white people about racism? And I said, we're the racists. We can tell you how we learn it. We can tell you how it feels inside. We can tell you what triggers it. We can, there's a lot we can tell you about racism. Mm-hmm. So my goal when I try to create these spaces is, again, this assumption, everybody has something to say and everybody has something to learn in these conversations. And there are different barriers, and for good reason, for white people in terms of that, and for people of color who seriously, have to worry about being traumatized and triggered in these conversations. So there's a lot of work to do there. But I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. So I think we did lose Maya at some point in the recording, but this has been not only insightful, to be honest with you, even a little therapeutic for me, to just even have this conversation. So thank you so much to both Maya and Erica for your time and your willingness to have this dialogue. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, but I think we covered a lot, and I think there's definitely a lot to be gathered from what you shared with us thus far today. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, LaToya, for inviting me. It's truly an honor, and it was therapeutic for me too.
And we want to thank all three of our incredible speakers for allowing us to listen to such a robust and important and informative dialogue here. And we do want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. We want to make sure that you're able to stay connected with us in the SPS Alumni Relations Office. So be sure to follow us on our 4 social media channels listed here. And even more importantly, we really urge you to join the Violet Network so you can connect and network with your fellow SPS and NYU alumni, as well as students and faculty. And we will also be allowing a dedicated discussion forum space, particularly for this conversation, so that you are able to engage and join that conversation. So one last time, I want to thank our speakers, and I want to thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.